Hi there, my name's Heather. I'm a clarinettist and a new music specialist. I'm from Canada, but for the last 20 years or so I've been living abroad, and I play concerts all over the world with various ensembles and also as a soloist. I've spent my whole career working with living composers from all over the world, and it's the thing that I love the most. I love the process of discovery. I love being involved in the creation of new works. I love my instrument a lot, so I also get a real kick out of helping composers discover it and write their best work for it. When I was a student, all of my friends were composers, and I spent all of my free time playing in their pieces, and for me it was really natural that I'd want to make my living doing the thing I got the most joy out of while I was a student. But I think it's not easy to transition from being a student to being a professional, and I think that's especially true if you're a composer. So I just wanted to make this video to give some kind of general advice about being a professional composer or being a really conscientious student composer from the performer's perspective. And I wanted to roughly divide this video into two sections, although I think there's going to be a lot of bleed between them. The relationships that you have, and then your general kind of organisation and rehearsal and workshop etiquette. But before I get started, please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more helpful content for composers. I'm trying to release a new video every Monday. Right, let's get on with the video. So your relationships with performers are going to be among some of your most important in your career as a composer. I know some performers whose entire career has more or less formed around their relationship with one composer. They maybe wrote a few concerti or big pieces for that person, and then when they became a famous composer and the person who those pieces was written for is then flown around the world to play them. Oh, the sun's really come into the room now. I think it's best to start, even if you're a student now, thinking of these collaborations with performers as lifelong projects. So my most fruitful collaboration in my life, both in terms of the joy that it's brought me, what I've learned from it, and the number of gigs that I've got from it, has been with a composer that I met when I was a student. We've been working together on projects for 20 years now. It's really critical that both you and your performer think of this as a two-way street. You're going to end up supporting each other professionally in basically two ways. One, in terms of the development of your practices, so they're going to stretch the kind of things that they can do, and you're going to become a master of their instrument and develop your compositional voice through the pieces that you write for them. And also in terms of the development of your career. So you should both be doing acquisition for gigs. Don't leave it up to the performer alone to find concerts for your pieces. And you should really try to buddy up on grant applications to share the workload. But do try to make sure that any commissioning grant also means some money for them. That might fit under the heading research and development. The amount of time that it takes to learn a solo piece can be a lot. And often these solo concerts can kind of be passion projects. You know, you're really developing your own repertoire. They're not the concerts that pay. So anything that you can do to kind of help your performer stay in the black while they're learning your pieces is for the good. I would also say don't be afraid to approach players you admire, especially if they're people who tend to play the kind of repertoire you think you really align with. I've been really impressed lately with younger composers who approach me at concerts and introduce themselves. I was way too shy to do that kind of thing when I was in my early 20s. That said, try to read the room as best you can. If you've met that player at one of their concerts and they seem a little bit tired, keep it short. And try not to be too pushy. You may have seen this work for other composers, constantly pushing themselves on performers, and it does seem like it works. But as players, it's mostly annoying for us. It's also annoying for me to see that work for other composers, because I find it's just so unfair to the polite and shy ones whose music is often just as good, if not better. Don't worry if you send a player a piece by email and you don't get a response straight away, or they don't program it immediately. Sometimes it takes time to find the right moment for a piece. Festivals often have themes or are looking for work from specific nationalities because that's where the funding is coming from that year. Personally, because I love lists and databases, I keep one in Notion, and anytime someone sends me a piece, it goes in the list along with information like the kinds of festival themes the piece would suit. I'm going to put a link to my Notion Repertoire Hub template in the description. Your work also might not be right for that player in a way you haven't anticipated. And this doesn't mean that you're a bad composer and you really shouldn't take it personally. It also doesn't mean that the performer is cruel or unfriendly or uninterested in you. It's just not the right thing for them or their technique or their concert schedule right now. And again, you also don't have to leave it up to the performer to find gigs in this scenario. If you can organize a solo concert by the performer you like in your city, then the piece will become repertoire for that player and they'll definitely look for other opportunities to play it. As I've already said, we spend so much time learning solo pieces, it's just really inefficient to learn a piece for just one concert. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about organization and rehearsal and workshop etiquette. So you're at some point going to start going into workshops or rehearsals with ensembles, and you should keep in mind a few basic points to make sure you make the best impression. I think having the right attitude to the ensemble is really important. It doesn't matter if this is a world famous professional music group or the student ensemble at your university or college. Those students will become the professionals tomorrow, so being kind and respectful and making sure they have positive memories of their time working with you is really key. I don't think this happens as much anymore, or at least I really hope it doesn't happen as much anymore, but I have in the past seen professional players behave less than respectfully towards student composers, and if this has happened to you, I'm really sorry. It shouldn't. Also, besides the fact that it's just not very nice, I don't really understand it because there's really only a couple of years between you as the student and you as the colleague. So it just doesn't make sense to me. The next thing is to show up on time. If a rehearsal starts at 10 a.m, that means that ensemble members are there 10 to 30 minutes before that time to set up their instruments and warm up. So if you're 20 minutes late, you're actually almost an hour late. And when you come to rehearsal, make sure that you bring a copy of your score and a pencil with you, unless you're working with an iPad or something like that. The players are going to have questions, and it does waste a bit of time if the composer can't answer them reasonably promptly. That said, answering promptly doesn't mean that you need to have a definitive answer ready to go. It's okay to say that you don't know, or can I hear you do it this way, or something like that first, especially if it's a workshop scenario. Workshops never have as much time as they need, but the real point of them is that they're there for your learning. If you can, a really nice thing to do is to learn the names of the players in advance. You can use ensemble websites to do this. It's just really nice to be called Heather rather than Clarinet. It just makes me immediately warm to a composer more from the very beginning. Someone, maybe the conductor, might ask you to speak about your piece a little bit at the start of the first rehearsal. I think this is a really nice opportunity to let the players know what you were thinking about when you wrote the piece. Whether that's something programmatic, for example, what inspired the piece, where the title comes from, what the mood of the piece is, or maybe some of the more theoretical aspects of your piece. I think spending 10 minutes or so preparing for that moment before you turn up is a really nice idea. Be respectful when it comes to recordings, especially of workshops. Often in the workshop scenario, the players are basically sight reading, or it's really early in the morning, or the recording situation doesn't put them at their best, or there hasn't been enough time to do enough takes that the performers are comfortable. They will almost always have already given permission for your recordings to be used for applications for yourself, but please don't be cross if they won't let you put them online. And definitely don't put anything online without asking first. Remember that the workshop is about your learning first and foremost. Coming into a workshop with a plan for what you want to get out of it in terms of your own learning, having questions prepared, maybe having a plan for how to use the time that you're given, but staying flexible in case of various player needs. This will really help you to get the most out of any workshop you might attend. Outside of workshops, I sometimes get a little nervous when composers attend the first rehearsal of their piece. Especially if the composer isn't super experienced, it's quite a stressful moment for them. The piece isn't going to sound perfect from the start. Of course it isn't. It's a first rehearsal. You know it won't. And yet, for the composer, this can be a really confronting moment. So really try in these moments to stay positive and to know the difference between a misunderstanding of your work and an ordinary mistake on the part of the player. Constantly correcting mistakes is really just going to frustrate them. When you're writing a piece, if there are two ways to solve a problem in a particular section or a particular bar, go with the one that's the most straightforward. Always do this. Don't feel like you have something to prove and let that make you write things that are difficult just for the sake of being difficult, especially if you have a chance to workshop a piece before a final version. Right, so I've got to the end of my list of tips and tricks for you. I hope this advice was useful. As I've said before, please subscribe to the channel and do let me know what you think and if you have any more questions. And I'll see you next week.